My friend Cara asked me to house sit for 3 weeks in October. She and her husband were doing a long trip through Portugal. Anniversary bucket list, the kind of thing you save for years. They needed someone to water the plants, collect the mail, make the house look lived in. I'd been between apartments since August. I was sleeping on a pull-out sofa at my brother's place, surrounded by his kids' toys and his wife's polite patience. 3 weeks in a real house alone, with a guest bedroom and a full kitchen, sounded like the best offer I'd had all year. The house was in Dunmore, a suburb about 40 minutes from the city. Quiet streets, older homes, the kind of neighborhood where people leave their garage doors open on Saturday mornings and wave at you from their driveways. Cara and her husband had lived there for 6 years. She'd grown up in the area. She knew every neighbor by name. She gave me the walkthrough on a Sunday afternoon. Thermostat settings, recycling days, which burner on the stove ran hot. The Wi-Fi password was taped inside a kitchen cabinet. She showed me where they kept the spare keys, the breaker box, the water shutoff. Normal things. Before she left, she paused in the living room. "Oh," she said, almost as an afterthought. "The bookcase in the study. Don't try to move it. It's not attached to the wall properly, and the whole thing will come down." I told her I had no plans to rearrange her furniture. She laughed. They left the next morning. For the first week, everything was fine. I worked from the kitchen table during the day, ran in the evenings, cooked actual meals for the first time in 2 months. I slept well. The neighborhood was quiet in the way suburbs are quiet. Not silent, but settled. Distant lawnmowers. A dog 2 houses over. The particular sound of a street that has been the same for 30 years. The study was a small room off the hallway. A desk, a lamp, bookshelves on 3 walls. The large bookcase Cara had mentioned was on the north wall, floor to ceiling, filled with paperbacks and her husband's old architecture books. I used the room a few times to make calls. It was fine. The bookcase was fine. I noticed a smell on the 8th day. Not strong. Not immediately alarming. Just a faint coolness when I opened the study door. The specific temperature of a room that has been closed for a long time, mixed with something older. Stone, maybe, or concrete. The kind of smell that belongs in a basement, not a study on the ground floor. I checked the house for drafts. I checked the windows. Everything was sealed. The smell was only in the study, only near the north wall, and only when I first opened the door. After a few minutes in the room, I'd stopped noticing it. I told myself old houses breathe differently. On the 10th night, I woke up at 2:40 a.m. I don't know what woke me. No sound I could identify, just a specific sensation of having been asleep and then not being asleep with no transition. I lay still for a moment, the way you do, listening to the house. I heard something. It took me a moment to understand what I was hearing. A slow, rhythmic sound, not loud, barely audible through the wall, regular intervals. Like someone walking slowly in a space with a low ceiling, taking careful steps. It was coming from the direction of the study. I told myself it was pipes. Old houses have pipes that knock and settle in ways that sound remarkably like footsteps. I had read this somewhere, and I held on to it while I lay in the dark for another 15 minutes listening to the rhythm continue. Slow, patient, unhurried. 12 steps, a pause. 12 steps, a pause. I got up and went to the study. The room was empty. The bookcase was as it always was. The sound had stopped. I stood in the doorway for a long time. On my way back to bed, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the floor beside the bookcase, pushed against the baseboard, partially hidden by the lowest shelf, there was a small pile of dust. Not the general dust of an undisturbed room. A specific pile, as if something had been dragged or shifted and the disturbance had gathered there. The bookcase had been moved. Recently and moved back. In the morning I looked at it in daylight, which helped less than I expected. The bookcase was solid, heavy wood, fully loaded with books. Moving it would take real effort. I checked the floor under the visible edge. There were faint scratches in the hardwood, old ones, worn smooth at the edges. The bookcase had been moved many times over many years. I called Cara. She was in Lisbon, 7 hours behind, and answered on the third ring sounding happy and slightly sunburned. I asked her about the study, about the bookcase. "Why?" she said. Her voice shifted. I told her about the smell, about the dust. I didn't mention the sound. There was a pause. "Marcus," she said, her husband, always said there was a root cellar under that part of the house. Original to the building, 1940s. It was sealed when they renovated. He looked into it when we first bought the place, but it was just dirt and old wood. Nothing there. "Is there an entrance?" I asked. Another pause. Longer. He thought maybe behind the bookcase. She said, but the previous owners had screwed it shut. Marcus checked. There was nothing to see. I asked if anyone else had a key to the house. "No," she said, immediately, firmly. Then, why? I told her it was just a general question, that everything was fine. I checked every door and window that day. All locked. No signs of forced entry anywhere. The backyard gate had a padlock, and the padlock was intact. That night, I moved the kitchen table against my bedroom door before I went to sleep. I heard the sound again at 3:10 a.m. The same rhythm. 12 steps, pause. 12 steps, pause. Slightly louder than the night before, or maybe I was listening differently. This time I didn't go to the study. In the morning, I looked up the property records online. The house had been built in 1941. It had changed hands 4 times before Cara and Marcus bought it in 2018. The previous owners had done a full renovation in 2015. I found a local historical society page with a brief entry about the street. In the 1940s and 50s, several homes in the area had been built with root cellars, below-ground storage spaces accessed through trapdoors inside the house, common before widespread refrigeration. Most had been sealed during later renovations. Most. I called a locksmith the next morning and had a keyed lock installed on my bedroom door. I told him I'd lost the original key. He didn't ask questions. I stayed for the remaining 9 days. I want to be clear that I heard the sound 6 more times, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always from the direction of the study, always the same rhythm. I never opened the bookcase. When Cara came home, I told her everything. She went pale in a way I hadn't expected. Not the pale of disbelief, but the pale of something confirmed. She told me Marcus had heard sounds twice in the first year. They lived there. He'd investigated, found nothing, and they had not discussed it again. They had a contractor come the following month. He moved the bookcase and found the original trapdoor behind it, a heavy wooden panel, original to the house, with a padlock through a hasp. The padlock was not the one Marcus had put there in 2018. It was newer, different brand, recently installed, recently used, the mechanism still smooth. The contractor opened it. Below was a root cellar, about 8 feet by 10 feet, earthen floor, low concrete ceiling. A single bare bulb on a cord, wired into the house circuit somehow, not on any breaker they knew of. A folding chair, a small battery-powered camping lantern, a bucket, a collection of paperback novels stacked neatly against the wall. No one there. The police came. They documented everything. The lock was never traced anyone. No fingerprints that didn't belong to Marcus from his original inspection in 2018. No forensic evidence of recent occupation that could be formally attributed. Officially, the case is open. Informally, the detective told Marcus it looked like a transient situation. Someone who had found access to the space, possibly through an external vent they discovered later in the backyard, long since resecured. Someone had been living under the house. For how long? No one established with certainty. The novels were various editions, various ages. The lantern had fresh batteries. Cara and Marcus have since sold the house. They don't talk about it much, and I understand why. There's a version of this story where it ends with the contractor opening that trapdoor and finding nothing at all, and I've thought about that version often, about how close we all were to never knowing. I think about the smell, about the first time I noticed it, and how quickly I found an explanation. I think about the 12 steps and the pause. I think about whoever sat in that folding chair in the dark, 8 feet below the floor I was walking on, listening to me move through the house above them, learning my schedule, learning my habits, waiting. I stayed for 3 weeks. I was never alone.